Hey everyone, it's Katie and this is My Life with VEDS. Today I want to talk about the emotions that came with my VEDS diagnosis and a little bit about how I coped with them. I think this is an important topic because that was such a hard time, both leading up to the diagnosis and then actually coming to terms with it, and I know I'm not alone in that. And this is by no means a tutorial on how to come to terms with the diagnosis or cope with this yourself. Everyone copes with grief in different ways, and that's okay. This is just about how the experience went for me. Before I get into this, if you haven't already subscribed to this channel, I'd really appreciate it if you would. Be sure to turn on the notification bell. That will let you know when I have new videos. Okay, let's get into it. I'm going to start with the period of time leading up to my diagnosis. I've done another video about my diagnosis story, so I won't go through all of that here, although I will include some situations or examples of things that I experienced during this time that were really emotional for me. I'm really going to try to focus on how these experiences made me feel at the time. But if you want to check out that video with my diagnosis story, I will put a link to it in the description of this video down below. There were a few things that really contributed to a really high stress level for me during this time. One, I was in a lot of unexplained neck pain, which I didn't know was a dissected artery. Neither did any of my doctors. Two, I couldn't get any doctors to test me for VEDS or take me seriously, which made me feel really helpless. And three, the life expectancy, or really my understanding of it at the time, and the spontaneity of VEDS was a huge thing to grapple with. So I'm going to take you through this experience. When I figured out I had VEDS and was trying to get someone to order genetic testing for me, I was also trying to cope with this intense amount of pain in my neck that had shown up spontaneously about a year prior. It would get a little better after a couple of months, but then suddenly come back in full force, unprovoked, which happened multiple times over the course of a year. By the time I officially got tested for VEDS, I was in a pain management clinic, and I was prescribed a ridiculous combination of muscle relaxers, acetaminophen, and naproxen, combined with both prescribed and over-the-counter pain creams, to get through every day. I had also tried injections, chiropractic care, and massages every week. So when I realized or suspected I had VEDS, the stress from being in that much pain got worse, because I started thinking of Ehlers-Danlos or EDS related things that could be the cause of my pain, and how much more complicated it would be to fix whatever it was that was wrong with my neck. At the end of the day, it was a dissected artery, which was finally diagnosed 4 months after my VEDS diagnosis, when I was able to get a scan of my arteries that showed the dissection and the pseudoaneurysm in my left internal carotid artery. During this time that I was in all this pain, I realized I had VEDS, and I was also trying to get in to see a geneticist again. I talked to my primary care provider, or PCP, first, who agreed I might have this, but wasn't willing to order the genetic test or wasn't comfortable enough to do that. I was referred to a geneticist, but I was put on a waiting list for over a year, which increased the stress level even more, because now myself and my PCP agreed I might have VEDS, but I didn't have anyone to help me. I felt really helpless at this time and very, very anxious. Now, I'm a little stubborn. I tried to convince my PCP that it was really easy to order the test from the University of Washington. It was. I spent several weeks talking to him and then thinking he was going to do it, because all the office needed to do was draw blood and send it to that lab. When he finally said he just wasn't comfortable doing it, it broke my heart. I was devastated. And then during that time, I also had non-VEDS related things I went to that office for. And one time he sent in a different doctor to see me whose daughter had EDS. He walked into the room, and before asking me why I was even there, told me that EDS wasn't just about a genetic test. It was about a bunch of features too, which made me pretty upset because I was walking around with all of these minor features of VEDS. Translucent skin with visible veins over my entire body, easy bruising, acrogyria, a thin nose, hypermobility of my small joints, which all put me soundly in the criteria to suspect VEDS and order genetic testing. And I also had already given up on that office and wasn't there about VEDS at all. I had angular colitis on the corners of my lips. So that experience really hurt bad. I ended up writing a letter to the office explaining how that made me feel, And honestly, I'm not sure if I ever went back to that office. During this time, I saw a vascular surgeon to rule out arterial causes of thoracic outlet syndrome, or TOS, for that unexplained pain. And he also told me he thought I was right about my suspicion of VEDS, but didn't feel comfortable ordering a test. I had a nerve conduction test during this time to rule out TOS too, and the guy doing the test told me, look, only people who have a suspicion of vascular EDS are going to get to see the geneticist. I'm like, that's me. At the time, it just felt like the whole world was stacked against me. And honestly, looking back on it, I got pretty lucky that I had seen a geneticist a few years prior who didn't bother with genetic testing. Because what I ended up having to do was call their office, which was across the country from where I was living at the time, and beg them to order a test. And they did. These few months were filled with so much anxiety and hopelessness. I was so anxious that something bad would happen to me before I ever got a genetic test. I really knew something was wrong. And I spent a lot of time trying to fix my pain with massages and hot tubs while having these intense emotions about my life and my potential VEDS diagnosis released at times I felt I couldn't control. I spent a lot of time alone in tears grappling with what it would mean for me to have VEDS. And a lot of time with doctors and well-meaning people trying to convince me I didn't have it. Luckily, I also had a few really close friends and colleagues who I was able to be real with. I was able to tell them when I was having a bad day with it. And while they couldn't fully get it, they did their best to let me feel my feelings and be with me through the good and the bad. And I think because the few months leading up to my actual genetic test results were so stressful with just trying to get someone to take me seriously and order a genetic test, that when the results came back positive, it was this really weird mix of emotions. When I got the phone call, I was devastated. I got the call about 45 minutes before the end of my workday, and as soon as they told me it was positive for VEDS, the sobs started. I remember the lady on the phone asking me if they were happy tears or sad tears, and honestly, they were both, because I finally had an answer and it wasn't in my head. But I couldn't stop uncontrollably sobbing. The next few days were a haze of emotions, trying to come to terms with the fact that I did have this, and real relief that I finally had an answer. But during this time, I was also so focused on my new perceived life expectancy. I thought that the average life expectancy of someone with VEDS was 48 years old, which isn't quite true. The number reported in the research papers is a median, not an average. And coming to terms with that spontaneous factor of my life was also devastating. I had just turned 28 years old. I remember during that time when I was still coming to terms with the fact that I would likely not live a long life, I would be really triggered by everyday things, like people talking about their retirement plans, or assuming, for those who didn't know me well or didn't know me at all, that I had a long, healthy life ahead of me. I think it was just a couple weeks after my diagnosis that an older guy came into work for a meeting and told me he was 84. During the meeting, he told me all about how things would change for me when I was his age. And you know, it took everything I had to get through that conversation without crying. But after he left, I was a total wreck. And I will always remember that day and that feeling of despair, that this thing I had was so invisible that someone would assume that about me, that someone could assume I would live to 84. Also among these feelings during this time was anger. I was angry that I had been in a geneticist's office before a few years prior, referred for possible Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, had asked them specifically about the vascular type, and didn't receive a genetic test then. That I had specifically pointed out my translucent skin, invisible veins, and some other features about me, and was told I didn't have to worry about it. Honestly, my emotions were so flared at this time. And when I found out I had a dissection in my carotid artery, and that's why my neck hurt, I was also really relieved there was an answer, and the pain I had wasn't imagined. That I wasn't being ridiculous those times I went to urgent care or the emergency room convinced something was really wrong. Because it was really wrong. Something was really, really wrong. And feelings of anger really showed up there too. Because I had been to the ER, I had been to urgent care, I had done the things I was supposed to do, and I had been let down. And all these feelings, the anger, the sadness, the whirlwind of emotions, trying to cope with my diagnosis and the fact that I had been let down by the medical system for so many years, all of it really got me fired up to start advocating. I also had finally met doctors that knew about VEDS, and I felt I could trust. which was such a great feeling I hadn't really experienced ever before. So just a big whirlwind of emotions here. But I thought, one, the medical professionals should know about this condition. I truly thought it was insane that so many people missed it before. 2, I didn't want anyone else to go through what I did. And 3, I certainly didn't want anyone to feel like they had to go through this alone. And really, that's where things started to turn around for me. I started YouTubing, which for a long time was really like a journal. And then I started a podcast and I got involved in a research collaborative, and all of this has really already been told. But what's important to me looking back on this experience is that I took that energy and those emotions and I put them towards something I developed a passion for: advocacy for other people with the same thing I have, towards building a community and making change. And talking to others in the community and becoming involved in all of this has been so healing. And I certainly still have my hard days. I think we all do with VEDS. It isn't something that goes away. It doesn't go away at all. Sometimes I have to take a break. I get away from it and I let myself grieve. I let myself feel all those emotions. In the early days, I played a lot of guitar, listened to a lot of music, did a lot of art, and spent a lot of time in nature. I spent some good times with friends, and eventually I found a good therapist to talk to when I needed to. And those are still things I fall back on when I need a break, when I need to be alone, or grieve, or recharge, or in some cases, just be away from the sadness. But overall, advocacy, I think, is what really helped me move forward with some confidence that no matter what happened, no matter when my life ended, whenever that moment would be, I would spend my time trying to make a difference for the people who come behind me. That I would spend my time connecting with others and elevating the voices of other people who needed to share their stories too. And I found an amazing community of people affected by VEDS. I found many people who were doing what I was doing in their own way, raising awareness and advocating. I found doctors and researchers who are also out to make a difference. Beautiful people and really beautiful souls. And together, I know we are making a difference. Our voices have become louder together. And to me, this has made all the difference in how I approach life with VEDS. Thank you for watching this video and this channel. I hope if you are going through a time of uncertainty with a VEDS diagnosis, waiting for results, or if you were just diagnosed, that you feel less alone. You are not alone. There is a community out here. I would love it if you would leave a note in the comments section. Tell me what led you here to this video or to this community. And I will leave a list of resources in the description of this video as well. Thank you, and I will see you soon.